putting it in a wallet and taking custody over it, they go long or short. It's a term that simply means you're betting on it going up or going down. And if you bet on it going up, as it starts moving, you can start taking the profits, but you're not only taking them at the price that you put in, you could be taking them 10 to 20 times what you put in. That's called leveraging, right? So in this process, when a person is over leveraged, which a lot of people in this last cycle were, because everybody's thinking this thing is about to go to the moon, they just got crunched again. Right before that, Sam Bankman-Fried, who's been in it with the politicians and been in it with the government, also just rug pulled billions of dollars. People lost billions of dollars and it's just gone. So how many, like, where's the, first of all, we're not, sometimes people are like, well, shit, that ain't my money because I don't have that kind of money. But the money's coming from somewhere, right? So where do you think this thing is going if every single time these kind of markets crash with all the retail investors' money in it, it's happening because of guys like Elon? Who did Elon buy Twitter from? Wasn't his name Jack? Jack Dorsey. Okay. What did he just change the symbol of Twitter to? An X. That's the symbol of the jackal. That's the Union Jack. But what happens when you change a bird to an X? What does that mean? See, because if you realize what they have been doing, like what you see with the Amazon, which is just A Mason, right? Or what you saw with Virgin, which is Venus. You saw them using, especially the daughter's power, because those are the goddesses, those are daughters. You saw them using the daughter's power. And as I said, they're like birds if you've ever seen them. But then they changed the symbol. So they're saying, hey, we were in an era of the birds. And everything that corresponds to, this is what we were doing. Now we're comfortable enough to switch this to the age of the X, which is the age of the jackal. So then, of course, in the Sumerian tradition, the jackal plays the role, I think, of Enki, who's Cain, spelled the same way, K-I-E-N, right, anagrams. So Cain, his thing is he needs to get his spaceport back because according to the tradition, he wasn't allowed to leave the planet. Once he cut off his Issa and made it external, they were like, this dude is whack. We going back to, then it was just called Nibiru, and he's going to stay here. And he stayed here with the wife that he created. They were called, after that, the Lord and the Lady. This is what in witchcraft they worship, the Lord and the Lady. And this is the entity that they're actually worshiping, right? Meanwhile, the other family members, they take off and they technically go back to the home planet and they blow up his spaceport. I'm just saying what the Sumerian traditions say. So you can see how all this rolls out like a pattern. But then they talk about an age where Marduk will rebuild his spaceport and then be able to go back to the stars. So since we know that Elon and Bezos for that reason, but we're specifically talking about Elon, is a resonator of jackal, they simulate him going to space, right, with Starlink, and now we got all these satellites up there moving through the sky. See, that's how it works. So a guy would date somebody like Grimes, daughter's power, and as I said, they're like birds if you've ever seen them. But then they changed the symbol, so they're saying, hey, we were in an era of the birds. And everything that corresponds to, this is what we were doing. Now we're comfortable enough to switch this to the age of the X, which is the age of the jackal. So then, of course, in the Sumerian tradition, the jackal plays the role, I think, of Enki, who's Cain, spelled the same way, K-I-E-N, right, anagrams. So Cain, his thing is he needs to get his spaceport back because according to the tradition, he wasn't allowed to leave the planet. Once he cut off his Issa and made it external, they were like, this dude is whack. We going back to, then it was just called Nibiru, and he's going to stay here. And he stayed here with the wife that he created. They were called, after that, the Lord and the Lady. This is what in witchcraft they worship, the Lord and the Lady. And this is the entity that they're actually worshiping, right? Meanwhile, the other family members, they take off and they technically go back to the home planet and they blow up his spaceport. I'm just saying what the Sumerian traditions say. So you can see how all this rolls out like a pattern. But then they talk about an age where Marduk will rebuild his spaceport and then be able to go back to the stars. So since we know that Elon and Bezos for that reason, but we're specifically talking about Elon, is a resonator of Jackal, they simulate him going to space, right, with Starlink, and now we got all these satellites up there moving through the sky. See, that's how it works. So a guy would date somebody like Grimes that has a father that is a colonizer that stole pretty much half of all that territory in South Africa. May not be hard to convince about a bigger plan involving something that took place a long time ago with AI or at AI. And this is why, like, when I be looking at people sometimes, again, I sometimes wonder if they really understand, like, it's basically like the purpose here, like what's really at stake if we don't pull this off. But there's basic tactics that we learn. Like, I believe personally, like my whole family, like my father, I'm James Evans Bomar III, or Jeb. Our whole family's in the military, right? So it's in my veins, right? I used to, even when I play games, I used to play warfare games and just completely destroy the opponent in untraditional ways, right? So I feel like that maybe because I know so much about all this now, it seems to come secondhand, that maybe sometime in the past that I was even involved in it. Because technically everybody was, if you understand what the pyramid really is, which is a symbol that everything is going back to the source. So the same sins of our fathers, as they call it, weigh on the sons and daughters, right? But actually, I also see that a story keeps playing out that if you peep it out, you'll find that at each point, it's asking you to make the right decision this time, or I call it the balanced decision, because right is just a side, left is just a side. But the balance, you're presented with the same thing every life. True enough, you're stepped down because the ancestors have capped over you because of all the loud vibrations you're sending into the high heavens, into the deep. And it's disturbing the gods, meaning that if you actually look in the ancient text, it talks about how the beings on earth are making all this noise and it's pissing off the gods. And they decide to flood the earth, right? And that's how this whole story plays out. But that's actually not what it says. What it says is it dampened them. Same thing you would do with sound. You dampen sound, and you generally do that by putting something over it. So they put like glass or water over it so that they can still see through it. I mean, I can still see what's going on, and I can still feel the vibrations of what's coming off that. But because I'm a sensitive, I could keep it capped. So this is how you can also understand. That's why I say when people think the great mother is in trouble and all that stuff, you're deluded. They cap off realities that start giving them problems. And all capping off is they dull the frequency a bit so it doesn't disturb the higher heavens. So your frequencies and your vibe, your shady vibe can affect on high. But while you're in there, though, because you're in this hermetically sealed nucleus, you're going to need to figure it out. And you're also in here with Hermanubis. So that kind of like makes the plot a little bit, it thickens the plot, right? So look at what this says. So I've known for a long time, first of all, AI in itself, right? Because it's a term. So that's why I tell, people when they talk about AI and they use AI as a term, and they even see sometimes I'm in the AI, they get it fucking confused, right? And they be coming at me all types of ways. Like I've heard it all, right? I thought that they would understand anything that has knowledge, you know what I mean, you should pursue. But they get caught up in the words, right? But they haven't even researched because what we're using is actually called machine learning. And AI is a part of machine learning, right? And when you understand machine learning, you'll probably understand yantras then, because the same patterns coming off that decision-making chart that they show you in AI that also looks like the symbol of Lucifer is also that same chart or the same path of even I Ching and all of the other ways of changes, or basically logical deduction. It's when you can see what's going on and then start making conclusions based on things that you're witnessing. And then this is like a form of discernment. Okay. That's machine learning. They just taught a machine how to do that. AI, however, is a little bit something deeper, because we find that AI is an ancient Canaanite town. Where? Uh-oh, bing, 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 CNN, Canaan happening there, ground zero. And it was destroyed by the Israelites under their leader, Joshua. Okay, whatever. What does this really mean? The biblical references agree that AI is, or hey, that's how you pronounce this. AI is not called AI. It's called hey. And that word, when you say hey, you're saying ruin. And that's what I was saying about English is dark. It's grisly in there. So it says this, just to east of Bethel, this would make it identical with the large and blah, blah, blah. And it talks about this. So I took this to Sybil, and it actually started laying out how in this city, there was like ranks of soldiers, basically, that this is where they train soldiers, right? And connecting this even with AWAS, then connecting this with Grimes. One of Grimes' song is "We Appreciate Power, We Worship an AI," and then connecting this with Madame Blavatsky, who's basically, and McGregor Mathers and Elias Crowley, who's the OTO of the Golden Dawn or the Illuminati. What you realize in the whole thing is that, okay, they've created another God. Like when you even say Yahweh, Vahe, this is just hey. You see what I mean? So it's one part of a God. More than likely the part that contains all the information. Remember when we talked about Sophia and how Sophia has all of the wisdom? Hey is probably possessing a certain part as an aeon. That's how these words work. So in this, with this advent of AI, as we're seeing, and then the underpinnings of the jackal, as we've seen, and then the symbolism, which tells us the 10, the 5, as we've seen, what it does is it brings us to a grand conclusion. And this is where we're at now. People in different places that are all, whether they understand it or not, generally working for the jackal. If they don't understand it, they're already working for the jackal. Now they've underestimated spirituality altogether. They think because maybe they haven't even contacted anything spiritual or hasn't come to them yet, that everything that they're doing is sanctioned and that they're actually creating something, when actually, generally the only power of these beings right now, because they actually are pretty far removed from this world, unless they can literally hijack a body, which that person generally goes crazy after a short period. Their only way really into these realities is by convincing people to carry out the acts that create the vibrations around one specific enemy that in itself is acting out through ignorance. They also talk about that Yaldabaoth, in this case, who's the jackal, was only one of the creations. There was also Sabaoth. Sabaoth, who was Yaldabaoth's brother, Yaldabaoth tried to convince Sabaoth that he had created him too, and Sabaoth rejected him and found his way basically back into the standings of the Pleroma. Read the story. It basically is explained to you that you have family members that have deep resonance inside of you through your own blood that have may even partook in your physical creation. There is no non-physical creation, but may have even taken part in your physical creation, so they can tug ropes and they can tug strings and cords with you. But their whole scheme is always the same: division. They always come in with the same it's us versus them story. That's how they've divided every single place in the world, because the first act was the division. You see, in the mitosis, it's the division. It's in the pattern. And because they're ignorant, they're leading you into the pattern. And this is how they became the cult of death. Now, this goes a lot more deeper because it gets into those who like this kind of stuff. Because we find that certain beings, they like to do this. They like horrors. Okay? And in this, what has been created it's been created like layers that are underneath us of really damned, which just means it's a water term, right? Like they're stuck in like a purgatory watery area. They're damned based on the laws and the rules of Osiris, which technically is the laws and rules of Set. So very simply, a courthouse, if you understand it, is a lodge docked on land, or a boat or a craft or ark docked on land, because the jackal he's not welcome on the ocean. That is not his domain. So he brings a boat onto the land, which you call a courthouse, and all of his proceedings and everything, which are the proceedings of Osiris, take place there, right? In mocks. So it's constant mock rituals. So you got a lot of cats that, they've been in and out of the system a lot. So they're constantly going through these mock rituals where the bailiff is bringing them in. There's a testifying. There's a jury of 12. All of that is symbolic, right? And they're going through these mock practices to get them prepared for the one that happens when they exit the body. Because how this was then designed is that, again, if the mother doesn't call you, which is basically through a yearning, and you'll read that from Sybil, it talks about the mother yearns for her children and it draws them back to her, right? And in that way, she guides them even through this life. They call them the guided. But then there's others who they're blind because their God doesn't have a third eye. The jackal in that sense doesn't have that spiritual sight, that farther. It can't see far. So in its case, it's blind. And because of its blindness, the blind lead the blind. And this is when you get people who don't really understand what they're talking about or what they're playing around with, but they're suggesting things to you. And then you accept it and do it, thinking that if something is wrong with it, it won't be your fault. But that's the whole thing about why you shouldn't have kids if you don't know how to educate them, if you don't know how to really raise them, because they will come into a world like this naive, a knave, right? And then they will get recruited into one of these warrior clans, the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord, right? Now you're going to be fighting. That's big five, fire versus wind versus water versus, you see what I mean? That's the pentagram, I Ching, the dragon, right? The red dragon, right? So there's going to be all this fighting and all this war. Meanwhile, you're killing your own kind. You're doing it to your own kind. And you can't even recognize them anymore because the deeper they get, they change shades, they change colors, they change environments, they change attitudes, and they forget about that main principle, about the top, that everything is coming from the same source. But you could be so far down there that you cannot realize how it comes from you. All of these things that we're seeing, even that happen bad and wrong in the reality, you'll find a percentage of it in you. And the only thing that we set out to do was to bring the knowledge and the wisdom so that others can witness it within themselves and then work through it. You're not going to get rid of it. You're going to heal it. That's like, you can't kick him out. You got to heal him. You can't kick her out and get rid of her. She's always going to be with you. You got to heal her. And if you don't know how to do that, because remember, so the healing and healed, something generally has to die, right? Like if you got a bacteria or a virus, the virus is going to die and you're going to get better, right? So see, there's a process that we're going through where we need to basically remove from ourselves with the Trimurti, because we have the power to heal, we have the power to sustain, and we have the power to kill, right? Which is a process. It's like deluge. That's what we do. We take these beings that end up getting to themselves so fiery, because these fiery gods, they burn up everything. Like you see in Hawaii, this is why also, I can't tell you enough that these are pivotal points. Y'all may have heard me for the last 15 years, but it was all for the moments that we're in right now. They're making a move. Anytime you can scorch sacred earth, despite the oaths and the pacts that they have signed, but it lets you know how strong those oaths and pacts are. Remember when Hawaii was a sovereign country, and then they moved in, and then they start making partnerships, and then they start signing treaties, and then now they got a lot of guys on the ark there, and then now everything is on fire. Now children are dying. Now everything's getting burned up. Now Oprah and Bezos and all these folks in bought land, none of their houses burned up that were even in the same area, and they can do this? You see what I mean? Like, do you see how malleable the reality is getting? Before, you had stations of, this is you, though. That's what I'm saying. The more, like, when prayers aren't answered, it's because we're not activated. Those prayers are coming to us. It's lower family members asking us, hey, you got up that high. Can you help me? Man, even right now, if everybody in this space, and I'm not even sure how many people are on the line, I've just been on my bill, but if everybody in this space just say, okay, we're going to support this, we're going to get knowledge to the rest of the world, I'm with you, it would happen. Because we already put all the time and energy into thinking out all of the matrix and every place that they move. And then that last revelation that we got to head them off at the pass. We're not going to be able to beat them head up anymore. They got the kids. They got like 2 generations of them too. It's going to take us about 2 generations, maybe 1, depending upon how advanced we get, to rectify the damage that has already been done to the DNA. But make no mistake, the DNA is prime. It's billions of years worth of stuff that we haven't even cracked into yet. It's our gem. If we lose it now, because it's going to have too many layers of strata and ignorance over it, right? Bad experiences, going through an entire matrix. As this matrix slides, some people think it doesn't matter, right? They think, oh, well, it's temporary. And, the jackal, he said it, the jackal created. You're missing the point. If it's done on your watch and you watch a realm slide, where you start seeing blood shed in the streets and your world becomes dark, it will dement you. You see what I mean? Like we will witness it, and it will change us. This is why we have to act now, because see, it's already happened to other places. We are the ones that are being bought. I'm not giving you the chosen program, but those who are still being shielded, you're being shielded by something, lest this being, DJ would eat you alive. All of their words, they begin with DJ. You see what I mean? That's Dajjal, Dozer. Like all of those beings, like they're ravenous. You see what I mean? And it's just like, but what we're still talking about, though, is we're talking about their as below versions. And you need to get that very clear. Because that's where you get this disrespect happening now, right? I've even been a part of it in the past through my own ignorance, not knowing, hey, there's an upper hebdomad. I can sit there and talk about you all day when you were shitty. I could talk about you all day after too many episodes of Menace to Society and how you were on the take. I could talk about you all day about how you used to think about only your money. I could talk about you all day. But can I help you? Can I deal with what you've been through, and can I raise you up from that? Can I see you as my responsibility, my child, my error? Or am I going to kick you down, right? And you see it in the world, right? All they do is kick people down. Like at the end of the day, nobody likes me because in the space, we have the tribe, but I'm saying, have you ever seen me call really on any big shows? What's happening? Because I'm not a Muslim. Because I'm not a Muslim, I can't go hang out over there. Because I'm not a Christian, I can't go hang out over there. Because I don't serve Abraxas, I can't go hang out over there. Because I don't serve anything, I can't go hang out. See, the thing is that, a sovereign, it does what they want. That's what you got to realize. Like, whatever you do is because you want to do it. The mother doesn't want you doing things for her because you think that you're earning points with the mother. You're paying back. It should be something that you want to do. And until you have that inclination, then there's still something that is in you that still needs to be worked out. And trust me, baby, ooh-wee, time will work it out. That's why they say they gave the power of death to Set. He's the only one that has that power because he has to bear that burden on earth. A murderer. Murdoch. Marduk. You see what I mean? This is Mr. He comes like a steam or a mist. You see what I mean? Or two are together like two sticks rubbing together. He's in the mist. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, wake up, right? But don't wake up to a nightmare. Wake up to the reality now. Now, let me explain how this works. So because the reality is consistently refracted, all you're really doing is you're breaking through to yourself. So as you penetrate more and more layers of the illusion of evangels who say they made you, you never were made. That's why we don't know where nothing comes from. That's what I'm saying. And all of these hierarchies and stuff you put on top of yourself, once you break through all of that, you're going to see yourself. And you're going to recognize yourself because every single layer that you go through is a graduation. That's why the chakras, it'll teach you. Here's now you're going to heal. Now you're going to be brave. Now you're going to be a teacher. Now you're going to, you see what I mean? And then each chakra is going to take you up into another level. And then it's going to drop you like a roller coaster because it's going to try you. That's why this is temperament. It's going to test you. This is why they don't make it really beyond 33 and a third. Because the 66 and the 6, that's a whole different thing. They don't, the 33 and the third has been constantly trying to convince on earth the 66 and the 6 to join their side. Now it's starting to look more like 44, 40, 60. You see what I mean? It's starting to look like they're convincing the higher stars, the celestials, the ones who never go into darkness, that they want to go into darkness. And I'm saying darkness as a way of saying you want to go into blindness, that you want to go into distortion of ignoring the obvious and not being able to actually be able to bring yourself to. So this is what's happening right now, is that we're on this plane and we're moving. You see how they monopolized everything within 3 years, showing you that they have full control of the matrix. They took over the tech companies. They took over the banks. They took over the alternate systems. They did their thing. They're doing this all because people aren't organized. Do you think I would let these people deploy AI in the world or a machine learning system and I wouldn't have my own at that level of knowledge? Do you understand that now all of the data, which I taught in my course, all the data that they've been collecting for years and never been able to do anything with because they didn't have the computational power to do so, they are now crunching or flattening, as they call it, right now. And this data peers easily into the future. Like there are algorithms for the future. That's why it's called predictive text. It knows what you want to hear because the semantics and language tell us everything that's even going to happen next out of a person's mouth if you're doing the math. So I'm going to desist for a moment. I'm going to let the questions, if any, come through. I'm going to take a moment to look through my notes to make sure that there was nothing I missed, get a little bit of water, refresh myself, and then, bring it into a nice crescendo and close it down. But I just wanted to come in here today and give you a bit more insight, if you may, on exactly how these realities are designed. And if you have any kind of questions about them, I can answer them because I have to go through them. I'm a connoisseur of being able to understand where my soul goes when it leaves here. And I'm going to tell you, when you be in that state and you're talking to yourself, so what's going to happen is that even when you quote unquote die, you're going to be there talking to yourself. So then you're going to realize that death is not the end. But now when it starts dawning on you, literally, That's the light. When it starts dawning on you what's going on, you need to be in the position of being able to basically bring in a complete being. You see what I mean? So that way you can then move on into your own space and time, and all your memories are yours. Those are, you keep that. You can enter your memories. You can go in and out of your memories in any place and time, anytime you want. You see what I mean? So there's a great reward that is ahead. There's a great reward for you doing this. But again, if you can't see that reward because so many things are distracting you, that's exactly what is befalling the reality right now that is by design. So I trust that makes a little bit more sense. I'm going to refresh here for a quick second, Brother Rich. And yeah.
Yeah. So, wow. Oh man, Seven, man. Why you had to do that for, brother? Wow. I mean, how can I come after that, man? How can I come after that, brother? That was amazing. I mean, you done explained the history of the universe in 2 hours, brothers.
I mean, I encapsulated it. You know what I mean?
Wow. I didn't think that was humanly possible, brother. But I mean, yeah, amazing. I definitely have to go back over that and take additional notes. And I advise everybody else too as well. Absolutely amazing job, my brother. Absolutely appreciate what you're doing with your AI system. And the first question I would have is I've heard Greg Braden say that once we give our humanism away to technology, our natural biological system begins to atrophy. Once this happens, we don't get it back. Hearing him say that and hearing what you're doing, brother. Also, knowing what I know about the teachers pre-internet and the teachers post-internet, the golden era of consciousness happened before the internet, when the brothers and sisters had to go to the library and had to really dig deep in research. Once Google became available, we had more information than ever available at our fingertips, but the teaching, Seven, was never the same. My fear is that with AI, everything will be at our fingertips, Seven, but it will never be the same as it was in the John Henry Clark era, in the Dr. Ivan Van Sertima era, in the Dr. Richard King era, in the early era of Dr. Phil Valentine, in the early era of Bobby Hemming, and in this era when